News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Dan Schwartzman. Markets finishing the day mixed with little change as the Dow gained 0.1%. The Nasdaq lost 0.2%, while the S&P 500 finished the day essentially flat. Meanwhile, consumer prices rose just 0.2% in January, the lowest gain since July, while the core reading that leaves out food and energy came in where economists expected. Money markets priced in 63 basis points worth of Fed reductions in 2026, bolstering bets for as many as 3 rate cuts this year. 2 federal immigration officers have been placed on administrative leave after a joint review found sworn testimony contradicted video evidence in a Minneapolis shooting case. The officers could face termination and potential criminal prosecution for lying under oath, which is a serious federal offense. A review by Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Department of Justice revealed that sworn testimony provided by the 2 officers appeared to contain untruthful statements. Rocket and satellite maker SpaceX is considering a dual-class share structure in its planned IPO, which will give select shareholders stock with extra voting power, which would allow them to dominate decision-making. The move would also allow insiders such as founder Elon Musk to maintain control of the company, even with a minority stake. SpaceX is seeking to hold an IPO later this year in a deal that could raise as much as $50 billion to fund artificial intelligence data centers in space and a factory on the moon. President Trump speaking to reporters outside the White House earlier today, discussing inflation, Iran, as well as a current relationship between the U.S. and Venezuela.
Well, we have a very good relationship with the president of Venezuela. As you know, we're working together very closely. We have our big oil companies going in. They're going to be taking out the oil and selling the oil for a lot of money, and Venezuela is going to get a big part of that money. And the relationship we have right now with Venezuela is, I would say, a 10.
That's President Trump. Despite Republican Senator Thom Tillis holding firm in his vow to block any vote for federal chair until the Justice Department's probe into the Fed's renovation of his headquarters is completed, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he expects a hearing on former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh's nomination to lead the central bank to still take place. Tillis, speaking to Bloomberg TV at the Munich Security Conference, says he isn't going to allow a vote to happen.
I have no intention of allowing any Fed board nominee to move forward out of committee and to be confirmed until this matter is settled. Look, this is foundational to Fed independence, and I, for one, am going to stand on the side of certainty, and Fed independence is what delivers certainty in our markets.
That's Republican Senator Thom Tillis speaking to Bloomberg TV at the Munich Security Conference. Goldman Sachs' top lawyer Kathy Rumler is leaving her position on June 30th after a months-long saga over her previous association with Jeffrey Epstein. In documents released by the Department of Justice, it was revealed that Rumler had accepted tens of thousands of dollars in gifts from Epstein and had used affectionate nicknames in their interactions. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon continued to defend Rumler.
You know, we've worked very closely with Kathy over the last 6 years. The management team's worked very, very closely with her. We know her as a professional, and we know her as a human being. And I think that's lost sometimes in some of the dialogue and some of the media reporting around all this. I'm disappointed that it got to this, but I respect her decision, and we're moving on.
That's Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon. The Pentagon strangely this morning adding Alibaba, BYD, Baidu, and TP-Link Technologies to a list of companies that aid the Chinese military, but withdrew it minutes later without explanation. The companies rejected the inclusion on the list, with Alibaba and Baidu stating they are not military companies and will take legal action to correct the designation. We get more details from Bloomberg's Mike Shepard in Washington.
This is something that's become increasingly closely watched by investors and by others who are wondering whether Chinese companies may be suffering some sort of repercussions from elsewhere in the government as well. The 1260H list, as it's known, is seen as a precursor, perhaps, or a bellwether to further measures that the government has taken against Chinese entities.
That's Bloomberg's Mike Shepard in the nation's capital. The move roiled the shares of some of the affected companies, with Alibaba down 2% and Baidu down 3%. U.S. consumers and businesses paid nearly 90% of the cost of President Trump's tariffs last year. That's according to the Federal Reserve, which says consumer and firms continue to bear the bulk of the economic burden in 2026. So contrary to President Trump's claims, foreign exports are only eating about 10% of those duties. The Trump administration, though, moving ahead with a $38.3 billion plan to remake the U.S. immigration detention system known as the Detention Reengineering Initiative. The plan calls for acquiring and renovating detention centers, adding processing sites, and taking control of existing facilities to create an efficient detention network with an increase of 92,600 beds. Norway and Italy are atop the medal count at the Milan Cortina Olympics with 18 total for both countries, with the U.S. in third place with 14 total medals. Norway also leading the pack with 8 gold medals, the U.S. with only 4. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Dan Schwartzman, and this is Bloomberg.